Okay, this video is called Art of the Belle Epoch, the beautiful age, the golden age, sort of the golden age of Europe. And this is the 1800s, but especially the time of the late 1800s, from about 1871 to 1914. So the end of the Franco-Prussian War to the beginning of World War I. And it was a time of great prosperity, of great hope. This was a time when there was a very high level of freedom, low censorship. It was a time of relative peace. It was a time when people were intensely Christian, but at the same time, there was a decrease in the power of the monarchy. There was more power of the public. There was a larger upper class aristocracy. So this is just a typical picture of a lady shopping in Paris, France, the Champs-Élysées. And she's happy, she's prosperous, she feels safe in the streets. It's beautiful. And I'm going to explain some of the cultural stuff behind this, because this is one of the times you would call this a Renaissance in Europe. Okay, everybody knows about the Italian Renaissance in the 1400s and the 1500s. But there was also a Renaissance here. My father's from Ireland, so I've especially read about it in the context of England and Ireland. And you'll call it the Victorian Age, and you'll call it also the Catholic Revival. And that relates especially to England, but also to Ireland and Scotland. And now I'm going to give more of an entire Europe perspective. We're going to have to do this in multiple parts because there's just too much stuff. Okay, so here's a beautiful painting by Arturo Ricci, the piano recital. And you will see endless number of paintings like this. They're all beautiful, and you see how happy the people are, how civilized they are, how well dressed they are, how they're just enjoying a nice time playing piano. There's a very high appreciation for the arts. Lots and lots of videos about concerts and musics and celebrations and dances, and it's just beautiful and happy. And this goes on, and this is one of the things. So Ayn Rand wrote about this phase, and she said the 1800s were culturally light years ahead of us. They were far more sophisticated than we were. They would routinely read these triple-decker novels by Charles Dickens, for example, Victor Hugo, that were 700, 800, 1,000 pages long. It's routine to read that. And I realized part of it was because there wasn't as much else to do. There was no TV, there was no radio, there was no internet. But still, the people had a very high level of concentration and sophistication to read all these long novels, and there was all these debates about the role of religion in society and the arts, okay? And I recently heard a very interesting quote by G.K. Chesterton. What he said is, art is the signature of man. Prehistoric man, we really don't know that much about him. But as soon as we know anything about man, we see the paintings in the cave. And only mankind makes paintings. And I'm actually going to say the Christians are more sophisticated than other groups because the Christians make much more painting. Okay, I think there's something a little backward about all non-Christian cultures. How come you guys don't make more paintings? And I know why you don't, because your religion says don't make paintings, okay? And I think that's backward. It's beautiful to have these paintings. They're magnificent. They're a celebration of life. Okay, everybody should be making paintings. Okay, and you see, I know there's a lot of talent in all the other groups, but they missed out on all the art. And this is a big reason why Christianity promotes civilization. Plus, it supports the little guy. That what you do to least of my brethren, you do unto me. Here's just a routine painting, Taking Tea by Charles Meissonier, a French artist. And you just see the elegance of how they're dressed, the appreciation of nature, a nice house. It's just beautiful. And there's, like I said, there's endless paintings like this. You won't just find one, two, you'll find hundreds like this. They're all just nice. And this is what I mean. Our culture is full of all this BS, all this modern crap, LGBTQs, Satanistic return to paganism and all this crap. Look how elegant all this stuff is. Now here's the incredible book. It's called Ayn Rand, The Romantic Manifesto. And like I said, this is one of the books why I describe Ayn Rand as a closet Christian. I know she wouldn't admit that publicly, but she goes on endlessly about how she loves all these Christian authors. Victor Hugo, the greatest author ever, the greatest novelist ever. Ayn Rand said, to read Victor Hugo, one feels as if they are walking into a cathedral as he guides you around. It's magnificent. Okay, and he was magnificent. Les Miserables is one of the greatest books ever written. Okay, The Hunchback of Notre Dame is also one of the all-time great books. Brothers Karamazov. So Les Miserables is the greatest novel ever written in the French language. Okay, French is a Catholic country. Christmas Carol, greatest novel ever written in the English language. Okay, Charles Dickens. Probably second greatest novel ever written in the English language would be Gone with the Wind. Third best would be Ben-Hur, okay, by Lew Wallace. All right, Brothers Karamazov. There's a great lesson to be learned from that book. You want to be like Alyosha. He was the best person, the devout Christian guy, former monk. Okay, Les Miserables. You want to be like the bishop. Give people a chance. He forgave Jean Valjean, and Jean Valjean was the greatest man in all of France. Okay, did all kinds of wonderful things to help people. Christmas Carol. Talk to Scrooge. Scrooge changes his way, redeems himself, and makes life better for everybody. Okay, so anyways, this is a great book. If you ever want to write a book yourself or want to understand literature, this is one of the definite books you should read. You should read Ayn Rand, The Romantic Manifesto. You should also read Arthur Schopenhauer, The Art of Literature. His book came out, though, in the early 1700s. You should also read, The Light in the Cave by Arthur Herman. Those are 3 must-reads for anybody that wants to be sophisticated about literature and culture. All right, so here's just, some of the great churches. Amiens, Chartres Cathedral. They're just magnificent, okay? Now, I'm also going to give you a quick little speech by this guy because he played a major role in the 1800s in culture in England, okay? This is John Ruskin. He was a genius. He came from a millionaire family, and he really promoted the arts as best he could. He had a bit of a background of being a Calvinist, and really very devout, read the Bible every day with his mother when he was growing up. He himself was an artist. This is a portrait of him painted by Jean Everett Millais from the Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood. And what pissed off Ruskin was the painting of the ancient Greek poets was put on the same level, Mount Parnassus, as not only the School of Athens, but it's another painting. You can't see it in this picture, in the Stanza Signatura, the signature room in the Vatican, the painting of the Disputa, the communion celebration of the saints. So he felt that poetry of the ancient Greeks had been put at an equal level with religious matters, and he felt that that was blasphemy, a sacrilege. Deep down, I think he was a little bit jealous of the Catholic artists because at that time they were much better than the Protestants. Later, a couple great Protestant artists came along like Leighton. But anyways, this was the speech. I'll put a link in the description below to a speech made with the English accent. They'll do more justice to it than I could. But the way he uses binary opposition in his prose, which he had learned from reading the Bible as a child with his mother, is rather magnificent. So this is the John Ruskin speech in 1853 about Raphael, the painter of these paintings in the Vatican, and the new group of painters in England, the Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood, who had vowed to be more religious in their painting, to go back before Raphael, they said, was too much emphasis on beauty and not enough on religious faith. But I just wanted to share this with you so you capture the religious intensity of the period. Because a lot of times the modern secularists try to whitewash the religious emotions and intensity that the people had at this time. And the reason they're so great, the religious intensity makes people greater. It makes them do higher quality work. It makes them do things that are more interested in benefiting all mankind rather than just making some money for themselves and their family. So here it is, John Ruskin's speech, 1853. There have been 3 ages in painting. The classical period ending with the fall of Rome. The medieval period extending to Raphael. Following Raphael is the modern era. Classicism art was pagan. Medieval art was Christian. Modern art denies Christ. All ancient art was religious. All modern art is profane. The ancient art was moral. The modern art is immoral. In medieval art, truth is first and beauty second. In modern art, beauty is first and truth second. All ancient and medieval art was religious. All modern art is profane. This distinction is as firm as light and darkness. He who offers God a second place offers him no place. Raphael on one Vatican wall wrote, "The kingdom of theology is presided over by Christ." And on the other wall, he wrote, "The kingdom of poetry was presided over by Apollo." And from that spot and that hour, the intellect and the art of Italy date their degradation. Raphael elevated the creations of fancy to the same rank as the objects of faith on the other. The doom of the arts of Europe went forth from that chamber. The medieval principles led up to Raphael, and the modern principles lead down from him. Just as classical art was great in building to its gods, and medieval art was great in building to its God, modern art is not great because it builds to no God. John Ruskin, the greatest art critic who ever lived. Okay, just a little bit about the literature of that era. Here's from The Hunchback of Notre Dame by Victor Hugo. And here's Esmeralda, giving something to drink to the Hunchback. Okay, and here's the Hunchback when he saved Esmeralda. And here he is running with Esmeralda on his back where they were going to kill her. Here's Esmeralda with her mother. Oh, it's just a beautiful story. It's great. This is one of the all-time magnificent books. If you don't have time to read these books, and they're big books, the auto books is a good way to get through them. Okay, now here's the great Victor Hugo. And he's the greatest writer of all time, greatest novelist of all time, according to Ayn Rand, certainly the greatest writer of all time from France. And Charles Dickens was to England what Victor Hugo was to France. The greatest novelist of all time from England was Victor Hugo. The greatest novelist of all time, of course, from Russia was Fyodor Dostoevsky. So here's Charles Dickens' dream. You can see all his characters in the scenes on the walls. Okay, getting back to the art now, here's a painting called The Music Recital by Luis Alvarez Catala. And I just want you to get a sense. Look how beautiful the dress is. Look how sort of engaged the people are. It's just elegant. And in the background, they have beautiful furniture, beautiful paintings on the wall. There's a sense of life that's just magnificent. And you can see, everybody's welcome there. There's grandma, there's the younger guy. And one just gets this tremendous sense of joy of life, of hope, of optimism, of respect. It's magnificent. And this is, all children should see this because it puts in their mind's eye the idea of what life can be like for mankind. You don't just have to be a lowlife, sending vulgar text messages and looking at vulgar videos on the internet. There's all this magnificent, beautiful stuff. And it was a little bit, reminds me of the quote of Aristotle. Aristotle said the poets were more important than the historian because the historians just tell you what has been and the poets tell you what ought to be. They implant in the mind's eye this idea of a better vision for the future, and that ennobles people. So here's another painting, An Elegant Gathering by Cesare Detti. Okay, and of course you can see the young man perhaps is flirting with the ladies, and the old uncle or dad's there, and everybody's having a good time, and they're playing some music, and that's just how it was. And look how elegant the ladies are. They have a footstool to put their feet on, a cushion for their feet, okay? And yes, it's rather wealthy. There's statues in the back. They respect their ancestors. They respect their history and their ancestors. Elegant paintings on the wall. It's sort of not Baroque, but beyond Baroque. Not Rococo, but beyond Rococo, okay? And it's beautiful, all right? Now here's just, an example of how they entertained themselves when they got together. They got together, you can see the whole family's there. The children are there, the elderly gentleman is there, grandma's there, the mamas, the daughters, the young man. The Poetry Reading by Luis Alvarez Catala, 1890. And you can just see they're having a good time, and it's elegant, beautiful statuary, beautiful paintings, a sense of this is how life should be. And that's what Christians do. That's what Catholics do especially. They love always having beautiful statues and paintings and furniture around. They just have a sense of beauty that other cultures don't have. And it makes their buildings more beautiful. Okay, now here is, because I really don't like multiculturalism because it tries to say everything is equal. Bullshit, people living in a teepee or a hut and all that crazy backward stuff. That's not equal to this, okay? Nobody would trade places if they had a choice. All right, so here is The Coach by Eduardo León Garrido. And you can see this reminds you, of course, of the fairy tales, like Cinderella. The coach takes you up to the ball, the big day, okay? Again, it's beautiful, it's elegant, it's nice. And there's just tons of this stuff. Okay, now here we are at the Vienna Ball by Wilhelm Gauss, 1900. And again, you see the same thing. And this is typical of Christian environments. Beautiful paintings on the wall or rug tapestries. Everybody's dressed up and nice and kind of happy. It's an enjoyable evening out. The furniture's elegant and beautiful. The chandelier. There's just a sense of life that's magnificent, okay? Now I'm just going to show you a couple more of these, and we're going to go actually through a little bit of a story here. So again, here's another ball by Wilhelm Gauss, and you can see everybody's all dressed up, trying to be elegant, important and stuff, and they got their uniform on, he's got his medals on, and there's the statue in the background, there's a church-like entranceway, more statues, honoring people of the church or the people of the culture. There's a sense of continuity, of community. We're all together. We're all part of the same nation, the same country, the same religion. That's good. All cultures will want that. That's normal. Okay, the modernism tries to confuse you about that. Okay, then here's the dance, 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 dance. What's it leading to? The chandeliers, the paintings. It's all, the same 1800s Christian background, okay? The golden era, the epoch. Okay, now here's some paintings that were from the same time, but they are of earlier time. So here's a painting of Romeo and Juliet, the famous play by Shakespeare. This one was done in 1884. Here's Abelard, the greatest Aristotle scholar, with Eloise, his student, and they fail in love, and it's kind of a star-crossed lover story, but it's a very famous story. Okay. And then, this one's kind of funny. This is the arranged marriage. So here you have the parents talking while the young man is sitting here rather shy. And the young lady is also a little shy. She has her fan. He has his hat, a little barrier to block their shyness. The parents are negotiating the beautiful statues and paintings and chandeliers and carpets and rugs and flowers. Okay, so it looks like there's maybe going to be a marriage. Can they work out a deal here? What did Rodney Dangerfield say about the difference between an arranged marriage versus marrying for love? Rodney said, if you have an arranged marriage, you can spend the rest of your life blaming your parents instead of yourself. Okay, so they get married, and here they are at the wedding registry, and she's signing the registry as he looks on, thinking to himself, how much is this going to cost me? The young lady here with the bouquet of flowers, it's a happy time. Okay, now here they are going to church together. Everybody's dressed in their Sunday best. It's elegant and beautiful. Everybody feels safe. They walk down the streets in their finery. The taxis, horse-drawn carriage taxis. It's just beautiful. A beautiful church. This is a Christian city. This is typical happy Christian life. And it's more beautiful than any other culture. Okay, now here's a lady shopping. We started out with her in the beginning. Here's another lady crossing the street with her package, and she's got her dress that makes her butt look like the giant trunk of a car. All the little signs for the events going on in Paris. Paris was considered the cultural center of the world. Here's the parents at home with the baby. Mama's nursing the baby, hopefully for at least 6 months. She'll probably nurse the baby for a couple of years back in those days. Back in those days, before birth control, women would typically have 10 babies, nurse each one for about 3 years. Papa is so happy to see them together. He's got to go out and work and make some more money for them and bring home some food. You can see how the parents love the baby, and that's why parents are always better than other people for the baby, because they love the baby. And loving the baby is the most important thing, because they're going to do the best they can. That's why parents are 1,000 times better than schools, 1,000 times better than hospitals or pediatricians, because they love that kid. Okay, here's a typical beautiful 1800s painting. This is called The First Communion by Luis Alvarez Catala. And again, it's just beautiful. These types of communion events, they get the whole family together and the relatives. Everybody sees each other, maintains a community. Inside of a Catholic church, you can see, again, all the sculptures, the paintings, the tapestries, the beautiful architecture. Everybody's dressed up. It's beautiful. It's nice. It's good for the kids to see this. There's wisdom in tradition. Okay, now here it's time for the christening party after the baptism. So they're going to the house. These are Italian families. This is the great Italian artist Arturo Ricci. And, all the families getting together again, sense of community, togetherness, belonging, helping each other. It's all beautiful. And now here's regular day-to-day marriage. And I laugh at this painting because this kind of reminds me of my former marriage with my ex-wife. So the name of the painting is called The Persistent Rita. This is Laura Teresa Alma Tadema. I think she's related to Alma Tadema, the famous male painter who painted all the scenes from ancient Rome. So anyways, he wants to read. He's thinking about something. She's sitting there looking at him. You are such an autistic nerd. How did I marry an autistic, boring nerd loser like you? And he's like, what? What, dear? Is dinner ready? Okay, now here is Cardinal St. John Henry Newman, and he was a leader of the Catholic revival in England in the 1800s. And it was a so-called Tractarian movement, and he wrote many famous religious tracts about religion. And for example, I'll just share with you some quotes from John Henry Newman. He says, "To be deep in history is to cease to be Protestant. If you turn away from Catholicism, to whom will you go? It is your only chance of peace and assurance in this turbulent, changing world. In the long run, it will be found that either the Catholic religion is verily and indeed the coming in of the unseen world into this, or that there is nothing real in any of our notions as to whence we come and whither we are going. If you unlearn Catholicism and you become Protestant, then Unitarian, then Deist, Pantheist, Skeptic, in a dreadful but infallible succession. God has created," now here's a different poem, "God has created me to do him some definite service. I shall do good. I shall do his work. I shall be a preacher of truth." And that's how I feel about doing this vegetarian stuff. There's so much nonsense on the internet. I feel that somebody has to do what I'm doing. I used to do it as a hobby, which gives me a big advantage. I can tell the truth. I don't have to play games. I don't have to promote or sell anything. Okay, so John Henry Newman continues. Here's a hymn from John Henry Newman. He wrote, "Lead kindly light amid the encircling gloom. Lead thou me on. The night is dark and I am far from home. Lead thou me on. Keep thou my feet. I do not ask to see the distant scene. One step is enough for me." Okay, and that's a lot of times how we get through tough times in life. You know, you're led by the light of Christ in Christianity. It's beautiful. Okay, it says Saint John Henry Newman. He was a cardinal and then he was made a saint, deservedly so. He's painted by John Everett Millais of the Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood, magnificent painters in England. Okay, all right. Now here's a great Charles Dickens when he was young, painted by Daniel McLeish, Irish painter. And here's Charles Dickens when he was older, painted by William Frith in his study, 1859. Some people consider him the greatest novelist of all time. Okay, he wrote a Tale of Two Cities, was also a magnificent novel. His favorite novel was David Copperfield, which is largely autobiographical, but this was magnificent, Tale of Two Cities. It tells you the truth about the French Rev back in the 1790s. It was a terrible thing. The French Rev has a lot in common with the Soviets in 1818. Okay, it was not like the American Rev in the 1700s. That was magnificent, all about freedom. French Rev was backwards and atheistic, and it was evil. You should know that because that's an important historical fact. Okay, now here's something from a painting called Quo Vadis. All right, so what's happening is St. Peter was fleeing Rome because of the persecution of Christians by Nero. And as he was fleeing Rome, he saw Christ entering Rome with a crucifix on his shoulder. And he says, "Domine, quo vadis," which means in Latin, "Lord, where are you going?" And Christ said to him, "I am going back to Rome because you have betrayed your people. I am going back to Rome to be crucified again." And St. Peter said, "I'm sorry, Christ, I shall return to Rome." And he did. Okay, and then he himself was martyred for his belief in Christ. As a matter of fact, it's like about 10 out of the 12 apostles were martyred. And they wouldn't have done that if they didn't believe that Jesus Christ was the Son of God. Okay, that's another one of the many amazing proofs of Christianity. You'd be surprised how good it is. If you study, like read The Case for Christ by Lee Strobel, it's magnificent. You'll be convinced of it. Okay, there's very good reason to believe in the resurrection of Christ and to be a Christian. It's the best religion by far. There's nothing even close. Okay, so here's Charlton Heston as Ben-Hur in the movie Ben-Hur. It was a great book by Lew Wallace. Okay, it was the greatest American novel ever written up till that time. And don't even bring up Huckleberry Finn. It's a piece of crap, okay? This is 1,000 times better than that. All right, so anyways, that's it for part one of the Belle Epoch, the beautiful age, the golden age of art and culture in Europe. And I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll do the other ones soon, the other parts.